In the winter of 1959, the icy wilderness of the northern Ural Mountains stood silent and touched, endless and merciless. This was no place for the unprepared. Yet 9 young adventurers decided to face it head-on. They were skilled hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, strong, intelligent, and ambitious. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, just 23 years old, yet already a man known for his precision, discipline, and calm under pressure. He had planned everything down to the last detail. The journey would cover over 300 kilometers across frozen rivers and mountain ridges. Before reaching the remote peak called Mount Otorten, the name Otorten meant "Don't go there" in the language of the local Mansi people, a warning whispered across generations. But to Dyatlov and his team, it was simply a challenge to be conquered. The group of 10 began their expedition on January 23, 1959. They were a mix of engineers, students, and athletes, each bringing their own strength to the team. Among them was Zina Kolmogorova, always smiling even in the harshest conditions, Lyudmila Dubinina, fiercely determined and often the last to rest, Rustem Slobodin, a disciplined athlete, Nikolai Thibobrignol, calm and thoughtful, and Yuri Krivonashenko, the jokester who lightened every mood. Another member, Yuri Yudin, had to turn back early due to illness, a decision that would ultimately save his life. As they traveled deeper into the wilderness, the world behind them disappeared, replaced by endless snow, shrieking winds, and an eerie silence that felt alive. They recorded everything in journals and photographs, laughing, singing, sharing food. In those frozen frames, they looked invincible, but fate had already chosen their final resting place. On January 31st, they reached the edge of a mountain the Mansi called Kolet Cycle, the Mountain of the Dead. By the next day, visibility had dropped. The wind howled at over 60 kilometers per hour, and snow whipped through there like shards of glass. They lost their direction and ended up slightly off course. Near the mountain slope, Igor decided they'd set camp right there, exposed, cold, but safe enough to last the night. They pitched their large tent, anchored it deep in the snow, and wrote their final journal entries. "The weather is terrible," one of them wrote. "The wind howls like a train, but spirits are high." They cooked dinner. Someone played a tune on a mandolin. Then, they crawled into their sleeping bags, unaware that something was watching. What happened next remains one of history's greatest mysteries. At some point during the night, something went terribly wrong. Rescue teams later discovered that the hikers had cut open their own tent from the inside, as if escaping from something within. They fled barefoot, half-dressed, into the snow. In temperatures below -25°C, imagine that moment, 9 figures stumbling through the storm, their breath freezing midair, eyes wide with terror. What could have driven them out of shelter into certain death? When days passed with no word from the group, families grew anxious. Dyatlov had promised to send a telegram once they reached their destination by February 12th. But that date came and went. Silence, finally, on February 20th. The first rescue teams set out: students, volunteers, local hunters, and eventually, soldiers. For days they searched across endless white until, on February 26th, they saw it, the tent, half buried in snow. Its sides ripped open, fabric flapping in the wind. Inside, food untouched, boots neatly arranged, a diary half-written. No signs of a struggle. No blood. Just absence. Footprints barefoot, some in socks, some in a single boot, led away from the tent, toward the forest below. They followed the prints for almost 500 meters before they disappeared beneath the snow. Then, near the edge of the trees, the rescuers found the first 2 bodies. Beneath a large cedar tree lay Krivonashenko and Doroshenko, barefoot, nearly naked. Their hands burned as if they had tried to climb or break branches. A small fire had been built nearby, long since extinguished. Above them, branches were broken several meters high, as if someone had desperately tried to climb, perhaps searching for something, or fleeing from it. Something had terrified them enough to flee the warmth of their tent and fight the frozen night barehanded. But this was only the beginning. For the searchers in the Ural wilderness, what began as a rescue mission was quickly turning into something far darker. The first two bodies, Krivonyshenko and Doroshenko, had frozen to death near the cedar tree. But there was something unsettling about their scene. Both men were barefoot, stripped almost to their underwear. Their skin was a strange, dark orange, their lips bluish. One had burns on his legs and hands, the other had bitten off a piece of his own knuckle, and there, embedded in the snow, lay fragments of flesh and torn bark, as if they'd fought desperately against something, or against the night itself. Following the faint trail from the cedar tree, rescuers found 3 more bodies: Igor Dyatlov, Zina Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin, scattered between the forest and the tent, as if they'd been trying to crawl back. They were found face down in the snow, frozen mid-motion, their expressions locked in anguish. Zina's body lay just 600 meters from the tent, her hands raw from crawling. Rustam's skull showed a small fracture, but no external wound. And Dyatlov himself, his fists were clenched, his face frozen toward the sky. They had all died facing the same direction, back toward their camp, as if something had driven them out. And they had tried desperately to return. That accounted for 5 of the 9 hikers, but the remaining 4 were still missing. Weeks later, when the snow began to melt in early May, searchers made a grim discovery in a ravine 75 meters deeper into the forest. There, partially buried under 4 meters of snow, lay the final 4 bodies: Lyudmila Dubinina, the Bobrinyol, Alexander Kolovaitov, and Semyon Zolotaryov. But what they found shocked even the most hardened rescuers. Unlike the others, these bodies showed traumatic injuries not consistent with hypothermia. The Bobrinyol's skull was crushed, as if struck by an immense force. Zolotaryov's ribs were broken, 5 of them, and Lyudmila Dubinina had her tongue and part of her lips missing. Her chest cavity was caved in, yet her skin was strangely unmarked, no bruises, no lacerations. It was as if the force had been internal, like an explosion inside her body. Even more chilling, some of their clothes emitted high levels of radiation. The investigators couldn't explain what they were seeing. They ruled out an avalanche. There was no evidence of snow shifting, and the injuries were too severe, too selective. They considered wild animals, but the wounds were surgical, not ragged. A fight. No sign of it. Exposure. Then, why the broken bones and missing organs? The official reports grew stranger the deeper they went. Witnesses from nearby villages claimed they'd seen orange orbs floating in the sky around the night of February 1st, glowing, silent lights hovering above the mountains. Others described distant booms, like explosions muffled by snow. And in one photograph from the group's recovered camera, taken during their final night, a faint orb can be seen in the darkness, half hidden by falling snow. The case was spiraling into legend before it was even closed. One investigator wrote privately in his notes, "I am no longer sure what we are dealing with here. Whatever happened, it was not human." The Soviet authorities, unsettled by the growing rumors, abruptly classified the case. The files were marked top secret. The official cause of death, a compelling natural force. And that was all. Families were silenced. The bodies were buried quickly. But whispers spread through the Ural villages, whispers of radiation, government tests, UFOs, and something ancient that haunted those mountains long before man set foot there. Some said the hikers had stumbled onto a military experiment gone wrong, maybe missile testing, maybe chemical exposure. Others claimed they'd angered the Mansi spirits of the protectors of the mountain. But no one could explain the missing tongue, the glowing lights, or the strange orange tan on the victim's skin. Even decades later, no theory fits all the facts. Imagine standing in that frozen clearing, where 9 young souls met their end. The wind still howls through the pines, carrying with it a question that has never been answered. What truly happened on that mountain, the night the snow swallowed them whole? For decades, the Dyatlov Pass incident has haunted the world, a mystery frozen in time, sealed beneath layers of snow, secrecy, and speculation. 9 young lives vanished under circumstances so bizarre that no one, not even the Soviet government, could fully explain it. After the discovery of the bodies, the official investigation lasted only 3 months. Then abruptly it was closed. The files were stamped classified, and the area itself was restricted for years. Even the families received only fragments of the truth. And so began one of the greatest enigmas of the 20th century, one that refuses to die. Theory 1. The avalanche. The first and most conventional theory was simple: an avalanche. Perhaps the hikers, hearing the rumble of shifting snow, panicked, slashed open their tent, and fled into the night. But experts quickly found problems. The slope was too shallow for a major avalanche, and the tent's position showed no signs of being buried. Their footprints were visible for hundreds of meters, something impossible if tons of snow had crashed over them. And the internal injuries, crushed skulls and rib cages without external trauma, did not match any avalanche pattern. Still, for years, officials clung to it. It was safe, it was simple, and, most importantly, it avoided uncomfortable questions. Theory 2. Military involvement. Then came the whispers. Some said the hikers had wandered into a secret Soviet weapons test of parachute mines or radiological experiments. Those glowing orange orbs seen by locals were said to be military flares or missiles. The radiation found on the hikers' clothes seemed to support this. Perhaps they'd seen something they weren't supposed to and were silenced. But again, no official proof. No witnesses, no documents, nothing but fear and speculation. Still, the government's behavior, the rushed burials, the sealed archives, made people wonder, were the 9 hikers victims of the mountain, or of their own government? Theory 3. The infrasound phenomenon. A stranger theory emerged decades later. Infrasound. According to this idea, strong winds moving through the mountainous shape could have created low-frequency vibrations, sounds below human hearing. These vibrations can cause panic, nausea, and irrational behavior. Perhaps, in their terror, the hikers fled the tent, convinced something was attacking them, but it still didn't explain the injuries or the missing ton. Theory 4. The unknown. And then, the stories that can't be explained by science. Some believe the group encountered something not of this world: the glowing lights, the radiation, the sudden, chaotic flight into the snow. Others say they met something ancient, a creature, a spirit, or even a force tied to the Mansi legends. One local tale speaks of the keeper of the mountain, a presence that punishes those who disturb sacred ground. To skeptics, it's just folklore, but to those who've stood at Dyatlov Pass, where compasses spin and winds carry voices through the dark, the legend feels all too real. Aftermath. In 2019, Russia quietly reopened the investigation, 60 years later. And the conclusion once again was an avalanche, but no one believes it. The official explanation does not erase the haunting details: the orange lights, the broken bones without bruises, the missing eyes and tongue. It only deepens the mystery. Today, Dyatlov Pass remains one of the most desolate places on Earth. Every year, new explorers visit the site, as some out of curiosity, others in search of truth. A memorial now stands there, half buried in snow, marking the names of the 9 who never returned. When the wind blows through that valley, it howls across the empty white, and some say, if you listen closely, you can still hear faint laughter, carried from a campfire that went cold long ago. 9 souls lost to the mountain, and a question that refuses to die. What really happened on the night of February 1st, 1959? Was it nature, man, or something far beyond either? No one knows. And perhaps, we were never meant to. If you enjoyed this journey into mystery and the unknown, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next. At Hidnarc, every story has depth, and every secret hides a side you've never seen before. Stay with us. The mystery is far from over.